Bird tough to defend. Why? Because you look slow as shit to me. So like, I'm missing something. So like, tell me what I'm missing. You know what I mean?
We can't, because I ain't gonna lie. I met Larry Bird tonight for the first time. I never met Larry Bird in my life, so I got to meet him, and that just gave me like, I was anxious. So I got some juices flowing for the game right now.
That day, that morning they came out with a USA Today article, and it said that Larry didn't have it no more.
Ooh.
So he came out that night to make a statement, and I was just the prime candidate to be man. Before the game, he told me, he was like, he just shook his head at me. He said, man, it's gonna be a fucked up night for you.
Larry Bird. Just hearing the name brings to mind dominance, toughness, and an unbreakable will to win. A three-time NBA champion, three-time MVP, and one of the most ruthless competitors to ever step on the court. Whether he was talking trash, hitting impossible shots, or making defenders question their career choices, Bird's impact was undeniable. Decades after retiring, his name still commands respect. Players, past and present, speak of him with awe, admiration, and sometimes pure disbelief at just how good he really was. But what do NBA players really think of Larry Legend? And when it comes to Luka Doncic, a player constantly compared to Bird for his skill, footwork, and court vision, you'd think he'd embrace it. But if you ask Luka, he's not buying it. When reporters brought up the Bird comparisons, Luka was quick to shut it down.
I mean, yeah, I looked at it. I saw a lot of films how he played, but you know, you can't compare me to Larry Bird. You know, the thing he's done is just way. I mean, more and more games to go, a long time, so you can't compare me to Larry Bird. And you know, I just want to keep hooping, having fun out there playing basketball.
That's humility at its finest. Luka isn't just brushing off the comparison. He's making it clear that Bird's legacy is on another level. And coming from someone who's already shattered records, put up historic performances, and drawn praise from legends, that speaks volumes. Because here's the truth. Luka's game does have shades of Bird: the elite playmaking, the crafty scoring, the ability to take over a game without relying on athleticism. But Luka knows better than to put himself in the same breath just yet. He understands that Bird's resume is cemented in history, while his own story is still being written. And that's what makes this so special. Even in an era where young stars are often compared to the legends before them, Luka refuses to let himself be put on that pedestal, at least not yet. Instead, he's focused on doing what he does best: hooping, having fun, and continuing the climb toward greatness. For Jayson Tatum, wearing a Boston Celtics jersey isn't just about playing for a historic franchise, it's about living up to the legends who came before him. And when it comes to Celtics royalty, there's one name that stands above the rest: Larry Bird. Tatum didn't just grow up hearing about Bird. He studied him, understood his dominance, and now he's chasing his legacy. In an interview, Tatum made it clear that Bird sets the bar for what it means to be great in Boston.
The thing that fuels me is, like, Larry Bird's the best player to ever wear a Celtic uniform. And, you know, that's the guy that, you know, whether it's averaging 30 that one season or having a 60-point in one game, like tying his record, like sometimes just being in the same conversation with him as far as records and things like that go. And, you know, you should strive to be the best. He's the best Celtic of all time. Even if I fall short of that a little bit, you had a hell of a career.
That's ultimate respect. Tatum isn't delusional. He knows what Bird meant to the Celtics, and he knows just how impossible it is to fully match that legacy. But that doesn't mean he's not trying. Bird won 3 MVPs, Tatum wants his first. Bird led Boston to 3 championships. Tatum is still hunting for more. Bird dominated the league for over a decade. Tatum is building toward that same kind of sustained greatness. For Tatum, it's not about replacing Bird. It's about honoring him by pushing himself to be the best version of Jayson Tatum possible. Because at the end of the day, falling just short of Larry Bird still means you had a legendary career. And if Tatum ever does reach that level, then the Celtics might just have their next all-time great. Kevin Durant is a 4-time scoring champion, 2-time NBA champion, and one of the most gifted offensive players the game has ever seen. He spent his entire career chasing greatness, breaking records, and carving his own path into NBA history. But even with everything he's accomplished, there are certain names in basketball that still make him stop and appreciate the moment. Larry Bird is one of them. When Durant found out that he was being mentioned in the same breath as Larry Legend, what was his reaction? Pure excitement.
Hell yeah. Somebody texted me after the game and showed me a screenshot, and I was giddy like a little kid. I mean, grew up watching Larry Bird. And, well, not really. He's older, but you grew up kind of knowing the legend of Larry Legend, and so to be amongst the greats, that's all you really want to do. That's a great accomplishment, but I keep going.
Even for a player like KD, who has already secured his spot in basketball history, being associated with Bird is different. Because Bird isn't just a legend, he's one of the measuring sticks for all-time greatness. And Durant knows how rare that company is. The fact that one of the most dominant scorers the game has ever seen still gets giddy about being compared to Bird, that says everything about the kind of respect Larry commands. For Durant, this was more than just another milestone. It was a moment to appreciate that he's truly among the greats. But as he said himself, he's not done yet, because chasing greatness never stops. James Harden has built a career off scoring at will, step-back threes, impossible finishes at the rim, and a level of offensive mastery that has put him among the greatest scorers in NBA history. And with every bucket, he's climbing the record books. So when Harden officially passed Larry Bird on the all-time scoring list, he took a moment to reflect, not just on his own journey, but on the legend he had just surpassed.
Obviously, we know how great Larry was and the things he did in Boston. A legend, a legend. I think I play the game the right way, and hopefully, good things happen for me. Passing, one of the greatest to ever play basketball is a great honor, and I just got to continue to go, because at the end of the day, I want my name to be, mentioned with those greats.
That's humility and respect from one of the game's greatest offensive weapons. Because here's the thing, scoring in today's NBA is different. The pace is faster, the spacing is wider, and Harden has mastered the art of manipulating defenses. But Bird put up his numbers in an era where defenses were brutal. Three-pointers weren't the weapon they are today, and every bucket came with a price. So for Harden to surpass Bird on the all-time scoring list, that wasn't just another stat. It was a moment, and he knew it. Harden understands that legacies aren't built just on numbers, they're built on impact. And for him, passing Bird isn't just about moving up a list. It's about making sure that when his career is over, his name belongs among the all-time greats. Because when your name is mentioned next to Larry Bird, you're doing something right. When one of the greatest players of all time talks about another all-time great, you listen. And when it comes to Larry Bird, LeBron James has nothing but admiration. In an interview, LeBron paid tribute to Bird's legacy, acknowledging his legendary career and the competitive fire that defined him.
One of the greatest players to ever play this game. A kid from French Lick, Boston, and one of the few guys that ever be in a three-point contest and shoot with a warm-up shirt on. And but just as he played until he couldn't play no more. Obviously, we know that he just played till he literally couldn't play the game no more. He gave everything he had.
That last part, that's what stands out the most. Because if there's one thing LeBron James understands, it's what it means to give everything to the game. And Larry Bird did exactly that. Bird's career wasn't cut short by a lack of skill or a decline in ability. His body simply couldn't keep up with his will to compete. And for a player like LeBron, who has dedicated his life to sustaining greatness, that level of relentless sacrifice is something he respects deeply. But that wasn't the only thing LeBron admired. That reference to Bird shooting in a three-point contest with his warm-up shirt on, that's classic Larry Legend, swagger, confidence, and the ability to back it up. It wasn't just about winning games, it was about owning the moment. And Bird? He lived for those moments. LeBron recognizes that Bird wasn't just an elite player, he was an entertainer, a competitor, and a relentless winner. A player who could trash-talk you, outwork you, outthink you, and then bury you with a dagger three just to prove a point. And in a league where legacy is everything, LeBron knows that Bird's impact on the game is forever. Because when LeBron tips his crown to Larry Legend, you know you're talking about one of the greatest to ever do it. Some players are born into greatness, while others have to grind their way toward it. For Miles Turner, getting drafted by the Indiana Pacers came with something extra, the presence of Larry Bird. And according to Turner, that changed everything. Bird wasn't just a name on the banners hanging in the rafters. He was there, in the building, watching, evaluating, expecting excellence. For a young player trying to find his place in the league, That kind of pressure either breaks you or makes you better. During a podcast recording, Turner described what it was like to have Bird in the gym, silently observing every practice, every drill, every movement.
You know, being around him, it made you lock in that much more. It's all of a sudden, when he walked into practice, bro, he's sitting here just like this every single practice, watching every single practice every day. It made you lock in that much more because you knew greatness was in the room, bro. And, you know, the old saying, like, real recognize real, that's one of them things, bro. Like, you got drafted here for a reason, you know, and I want to make sure I put in a return on his investment. So
that's big time.
It was dope just to actually be able just to be in the presence of greatness like that and know that he saw like the greatness in me.
That's the Bird effect. Even without playing a single minute, Larry Bird's presence alone forced players to elevate their game. Turner wasn't just trying to impress his coaches or teammates. He was playing in front of Larry Bird. And when Larry Legend is sitting there, arms crossed, watching every drill, every shot, and every defensive rotation, you lock in. Because when greatness is in the room, there's no hiding. For Turner, it wasn't just about becoming a big part of the team. It was about living up to the expectations that came with being in Bird's presence. Think about it. When Larry Bird watches you, what do? You hustle harder, you don't take plays off, you push through fatigue, you prove you belong. And it wasn't just Turner. Players who stepped onto the court in front of Bird knew that they weren't just being evaluated. They were being measured against a standard of excellence, a standard that Bird himself set as a player. Bird didn't have to say a word. His presence alone sent that message loud and clear. And for a young player like Turner, who was still finding his identity in the league, having one of the greatest to ever play the game recognize his talent, that meant everything. Turner's experience is a reminder that Bird's influence didn't stop when he retired. Whether he was running a front office, mentoring young players, or simply showing up to practice, his presence alone was enough to make guys push harder. Because if Larry Bird, one of the most competitive players in NBA history, believes in you, you better make sure you prove him right. And if you don't, you won't last long. That's what made Bird's presence so powerful. He didn't have to say much. His legacy, his reputation, and his expectations did all the talking. And for guys like Turner, that's more than enough motivation. Larry Bird's greatness isn't just something you read about in history books, it's something that continues to be passed down through generations. Even today's youngest basketball phenoms, players who weren't even born when Bird was dominating the league, still know exactly who he was. One of those rising stars, Cooper Flagg. A top NBA prospect and one of the most highly touted young players in the country, Flagg never got to watch Bird live. But that didn't stop him from studying the legend, thanks to his parents, who were die-hard Celtics fans. During an interview, Flagg shared how Bird's impact reached him through family tradition.
I say Larry Bird. You know, I watched a lot of like movies and stuff on him and like old like championship games about him. My parents really loved watching him play. They were huge Celtics fans. So I mean, growing up for them, they were like Larry Bird fans. So then they had like the old games and stuff. So they just threw the DVDs in and we would just watch.
That's the thing about Bird's legacy. It doesn't fade. His clutch performances are still talked about today. His championship runs are still a must-watch for young hoopers looking to learn the game. His highlights, trash talk, and stories still get shared in locker rooms across the world. Bird's influence isn't just about numbers and accolades. It's about the way he changed the game. For Flagg, watching old Bird footage wasn't just entertainment, it was an education. Because even though the game has changed, certain things never go out of style. Elite footwork, ridiculous basketball IQ, an unbreakable will to win. The ability to rise to the moment no matter the pressure, Bird had all of it. And if Flagg, one of the next great NBA stars, learned even a fraction of Bird's mentality from watching those games, we might be seeing another cold-blooded competitor in the making. Because Bird didn't just inspire players of his own era, he continues to shape the mindset of the next generation. And as long as there are players like Flagg who study the greats, Larry Bird's legacy will never stop influencing the game. Some players from the past might not have translated well to the modern NBA. Larry Bird? He would have been a problem. At least, that's how Baron Davis sees it. The former NBA All-Star didn't hesitate when asked how Bird would fare in today's game. In fact, his response was pure disbelief that anyone would even question it.
Like, are you kidding me? Larry Bird in this era? Are you kidding me?
That's what be boiling my blood, but
it'd
people
been more
don't.
rough though.
For who?
For Larry.
How?
And it starts.
What you mean?
How?
Just the physical capability.
He's 6'10", dude.
That's a lot of 6'10".
Okay.
Now it's a lot of that. That's all I'm saying. He birthed that. Don't get me wrong, he birthed it. I'm just saying. We hadn't seen it there.
Who's going to be matched up against Larry Bird? Karl Anthony Towns.
That's a nightmare, man.
For Karl Anthony Towns.
Davis has a point. In today's NBA, spacing, shooting, and versatility reign supreme. And guess what? Larry Bird was ahead of his time in all of those areas. Imagine Bird in today's pace and space league, a 6'10" sharpshooter who can knock down threes effortlessly? Check. An elite passer who can create shots for his teammates? Check. A basketball genius who sees plays before they happen? Check. The idea that Bird was too slow or not athletic enough for today's game is laughable. Because Bird wasn't just surviving in an ultra-physical, grinded-out 80s NBA, he was dominating it. The way Nikola Jokic tears apart defenses with unreal court vision, footwork, and deceptive athleticism, Bird was doing that 40 years ago. The way Kevin Durant rises up and buries shots from impossible angles, Bird was doing that before the three-point line was even a major weapon. So, would Larry Bird be an unstoppable force in today's game? Baron Davis sure thinks so. And honestly, he's 100% right. Andre Iguodala has seen it all in the NBA. He's gone up against multiple generations of superstars, from Kobe Bryant and Tim Duncan to LeBron James and Kevin Durant. He's played on championship teams, battled against all-time greats, and understands what it takes to win at the highest level. And when he talks about Larry Bird, he acknowledges something that a lot of people overlook. Bird wasn't just one of the greatest players of all time. He dominated in an era where the odds weren't exactly in his favor. In an interview, Iguodala put it bluntly,
I think there is a different level of respect for the white guys we feel like belong in the NBA. Imagine how good Larry Bird was. That I think that Larry Bird might be in my starting five.
That's a powerful statement. Bird played in a time when the league was rapidly changing, where athleticism, physicality, and raw talent were redefining what it meant to be a superstar. And yet, Bird didn't just belong, he dominated. He won 3 straight MVPs in a league stacked with Hall of Famers. He went toe-to-toe with Magic, Jordan, and Dr. J, and won. He was one of the fiercest competitors the game has ever seen. He didn't just play against great athletes, he outthought, outworked, and outclassed them. Bird wasn't built like LeBron James or as physically imposing as Shaquille O'Neal, but that never mattered. His skills, basketball IQ, and sheer determination allowed him to dominate an era filled with giants. He wasn't just keeping up with the game, he was ahead of it. For Iguodala to say Bird belongs in his all-time starting 5, that's massive respect. Because in a sport that's always evolving, one thing remains the same: greatness is greatness. And Larry Bird's greatness? It was undeniable. Then, now, always, in any era, against anyone. Larry Bird wasn't flashy. He wasn't the most athletic guy on the floor. But what he did have: a legendary skill set, a basketball mind unlike any other, and a competitive fire that never burned out. Bird wasn't the guy flying through the air, pulling off gravity-defying dunks. He didn't overwhelm opponents with speed or sheer athleticism. But what he did do? He outworked, outsmarted, and outplayed nearly everyone who stood in his way. With an icy stare and an unmatched will to win, he took over games not just with his shot, but with his mind. Bird saw the floor like a chessboard, always thinking 2-3 steps ahead. He could drop 40 points without even breaking a sweat, control the game with elite passing, and if you dared to talk trash, he'd humiliate you while telling you exactly how he was going to do it. And that's why, decades after his last game, the respect for Bird remains universal. Young stars like Luka Doncic and Jayson Tatum see him as the standard for greatness. Superstars like LeBron James and Kevin Durant are honored just to be mentioned in the same breath as him. Former players like Baron Davis and Andre Iguodala know that Bird's game would translate in any era. Future stars like Cooper Flagg are still watching old games, learning from the best. That's what true greatness looks like. It doesn't fade, it doesn't get lost in time, it doesn't need to be explained, it just is. Bird's greatness transcends generations because it was never about just one thing. It wasn't just the 3 championships, it wasn't just the 3 MVPs in a row, it wasn't just the records, the highlights, or the clutch moments. It was the way he played the game, the way he commanded respect from teammates and opponents alike, the way he refused to back down, no matter who was in front of him, the way he made sure that every time he stepped on the floor, he was the best player out there. And when he couldn't be that guy anymore, He walked away. No excuses, no holding on too long. He gave the game everything he had, and when his body said enough, he left with his legacy untouched. That's why, when we talk about the greatest of all time, Larry Bird's name will always be in the conversation. Because no matter how much the game evolves, legends never fade. Now we turn it over to you. Where do you rank Larry Bird all time? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because one thing's for sure, Larry Legend's name will never be forgotten.